What are the goals for GPC States coming up?
Yeah, so hoping to hit really close to a 400 total.
Oh, wow.
So hopefully a 150 squat, 80 bench, and ideally a 170 deadlift. And they were sort of like, okay, we've got a couple of options. Either you pull your act together and you agree to work on improving yourself, and we'll pay for you to do a month of powerlifting coaching and, start training in a healthy way, but you have to be eating, or you lose your job. So I chose okay, let's see if I can kick myself into gear a bit better. Deadlift, I've actually swapped from conventional to sumo as well.
How dare you?
How dare you?
Yeah, look, playing to the teacup leverages.
Yeah.
It's just it feels better.
Alrighty, everybody. Welcome back to the next episode of the Strength Institute podcast. Today, I'm joined by Sammie Johannes, who used to work originally in accounting. Actually, before we even go into this, disclaimer. We've decided we're going to have a little disclaimer at the front. In this podcast, guys, not only are we going to be talking about sort of powerlifting and competing, but it's also going to be touching on pretty serious topics such as like eating disorders. So if that's something that's going to upset you or maybe trigger you, just a bit of a heads up for you there. Okay, so Sammie used to work in accounting software and was an accountant and a business development executive before moving to WA in 2018. She's also a business coach in the fitness industry and has been powerlifting since 2014 while all the time recovering from an eating disorder. As well as being a powerlifter, Sammie runs a YouTube channel which is talking about powerlifting and mental health. And so this all came about when I had seen you do a few posts on your Facebook, actually, talking about overcoming or working through eating disorders and getting into powerlifting as well. And I thought that's really both interesting and also useful information for people who may be struggling with that, but also for the coaching side of things, because I've definitely trained people that have eating disorders before, and it's sort of hard to know where to draw the line, what to tiptoe around, what to bring up, what to not bring up, and let them deal with themselves. So a little bit of insight might be pretty handy for me. So thanks very much for jumping onto the podcast.
Yeah, that's all right. Thank you for having me.
No worries. As well, you have a state GPC States coming up in 2 weeks' time for powerlifting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't mention this in the original blurb, guys, but she's quite a strong powerlifter here. We're squatting 145 kilos, benching 75, and deadlifting 160. What are the goals for GPC States coming up?
Yeah, so hoping to hit really close to a 400 total.
Oh, wow.
So hopefully a 150 squat, 80 bench, and ideally a 170 deadlift.
Fantastic. So one, how did you get into powerlifting? And two, was it, or how have you managed to sort of work with your eating disorder and ease yourself into powerlifting? Because the two can sort of clash sometimes when you're talking about performance and training, that goes hand in hand with food. So how do you manage that? Or maybe if you just start with telling me your story about how you got into everything.
Yeah, so it was mid 2014 and I was pretty deep in a relapse. I weighed about 39 kilos.
Wow.
So I was 19 or 20 at the time. I think it was actually just after I turned 20. So I wasn't able to function in my accounting job. My bosses cornered me after work one night and were like, what's going on? Like, we've noticed you've lost a lot of weight. You're not eating during the workday. You're falling asleep at your desk. You're on your phone, like, just constantly. And I ended up just telling them, like, yeah, I've relapsed with my eating disorder. And they were sort of like, okay, we've got a couple of options. Either you pull your act together and you agree to work on improving yourself, and we'll pay for you to do a month of powerlifting coaching and, start training in a healthy way, but you have to be eating, or you lose your job. So I chose okay, let's see if I can kick myself into gear a bit better. I'd been training in gyms on and off since I was about 13 because I used to play soccer at the school I went to, and part of our soccer training was we'd go in the gym once a week and do weights and just learn how to move a bit better. And yeah, so had been training for 7 years by this point, on and off. And I was at the point though where it was really toxic training because I was going to the gym at like 3:30 in the morning and training for 3 hours, coming home, then going to work, and then doing the same thing in the evening.
Right. So it was the gym was just a means to to drop the weight for you as opposed to being healthier, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was that, and then restricting quite heavily. Like, I was living at home. The only meal that my parents ever saw me eat was dinner, and even then, if I ate more than half my dinner, it was kind of a bit of a miracle back then.
Yeah. I find it really interesting that they suggested to go into powerlifting training. Were these guys in the powerlifting scene themselves?
Yeah, so one of my old bosses, he had done a couple of comps. We also had a client who was a powerlifting coach, so that was who they got me to get coached by initially. And yeah, it just got me back into a pattern of like being able to eat. And like, they had a rule that if they didn't see me eat, they would march me down to the cafe downstairs and literally sit there and make me eat in front of them so that they knew I was eating.
Right. Okay. Well, that's great commitment from the bosses at work then.
Yeah.
Pretty supportive workplace.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah, excellent. And so how long did it take you when you started your powerlifting training to really start to enjoy it and want to be like, hey, I want to start to lift a little heavier and work on performance and everything like that?
Yeah, so it took probably a couple of months. Obviously, because that was when I was having to try and change the thought patterns around, I need to be eating to be able to train. I'm actually really enjoying this training, but there was that constant conflict. I ended up putting on about 5 kilos within a few months, which was good. I did it healthily at least, instead of, just shoving food in my face. It was just more of a gradual increase.
Sure.
So it was manageable, but I did learn very quickly that I was not allowed to have my fitness pal on my phone.
Right.
I have it now that I know how to manage my eating disorder, but back then it was just not a good thing because I was tracking like everything.
And that's what I was going to ask you there. Like, is it, you actually already answered my question, but basically do you track everything, or does that become too meticulous? Or do you just say, I'm just going to eat a little bit more than yesterday, or I'm going to eat until I feel full and then maybe have a little bit more later? It was just more of a how you were feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like now I know what I eat every day. I know what I need to eat to be maintaining weight, or at the moment we've learned that what I've been eating the last couple of weeks isn't enough. So I've got to increase my food intake a little bit just so I'm sitting not below 56, but ideally like just above.
Right. And as you've continued to work in powerlifting, did it start to become easier and easier for you in regards to understanding that food has to come in? Or is it something that you're constantly sort of still working on?
Yeah, like it's a hard one. Like I do get, even now, and I have to remind myself that it's a good thing, that the number on the scales can increase. Like I know eventually I'm going to end up in the 60 kilo class. So the goal will be to eat me up to 60 kilos comfortably, not dangerously for my headspace. So it's just, making sure I know how things are going.
Sure.
The main thing.
And that's really important as well, because I tell that to clients all the time, is that when you're looking at the scale, the number can be deceptive because, your weight might be increasing, but your body composition going in the correct direction, which means you're losing body fat over time or you're increasing your lean mass over time, which are all good things, but the weight on the scale might still creep up. So people get really fixated on the number on the scale and without realizing that, hey, that can go up and you can still be really healthy and getting actually healthier as it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like it is a mindset thing. And I think the funny thing is that the number on the scale, as you said, might not change. It's your body composition changing. So you'll notice it more readily, I guess, is probably the word to use. In like your jeans might be a bit looser, for example.
Yeah. I guess another question that I had was, I've worked with some clients that have dropped a lot of weight. They've started from, quite a high level of body fat, and over time they've come down. But, for whatever reason, they were limiting their calories quite a bit. Not so much on an eating disorder as in they didn't want to eat or they were, doing other things after they ate, but just in the fact that they wanted to drop weight, and that's the way they thought that was the best way, was to cut back a bunch of calories. Right? And now we have this problem where when you do that for a year and a half, or, a long time, is that it can mess with people's metabolisms. And then when you introduce food back in, they will put on some extra fat and body mass that's unwanted. But they need to realize there's sort of that reverse dieting phase now where they need to teach their body to start using the calories again. So is that something that you had to deal with, or were you lucky enough that it was just more of a slow, gradual progression in calories and weight?
Yeah, it's always been sort of slow and steady. And if I've been, cutting down for comp, it's just slow and steady. We don't sort of drastically change things. It's just gradual week by week. Like, otherwise, you can really mess with someone's mindset. I think that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, you need people that are competing to be confident all the time, confident under the bar, confident on the scales, confident in themselves, right? So if you're introducing doubt to them, we need to cut some more weight, or you're not eating enough, it's going to take away from their performance.
Yeah.
So yeah, you always want to be comfortable and confident, I should say, not comfortable. Sometimes powerlifting's a little uncomfortable, but
yeah.
yeah. But you always want to be confident going into a meet for sure. Yeah. The second part of this, the flip side, would be more from the coaching side of things. And I mentioned this a little bit early on in the podcast, is that I'm sure a lot of coaches have clients or athletes who have had or are working through eating disorders. And it's one of those eggshell situations where I don't want to tell someone, hey, you have to eat this food if you want to lift this weight that you've told me you want to lift. Like, you're not going to, you need to feed and fuel your body.
Yeah.
I don't want to give them a complex about food. At the same time, I don't want to completely ignore it, because if they haven't made the change by themselves up to this point, maybe they need some sort of external driver saying, hey, there needs to be some sort of change in this area. Now, obviously, you can't speak for everyone that's got an eating disorder. Everyone's a little different, but maybe a bit of insight into your experience with that. So when you've been dealing with your coaches, do you want them to just leave it completely up to you? Are you looking for a little bit of guidance, not so much in terms of, hey, these are the macros, eat this many grams of fats and proteins and carbs, but look, if we want to do this, we just need to increase the calories a little bit and then leave that up to you to do? What worked well for you?
Definitely now it is like, okay, this is what my body weight is. This is what we're trying to achieve. I need to eat more. And Joel's got no qualms about telling me, eat more.
That's right. Joel's your coach now as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect.
So, it's really important that, I do keep an eye on my weight, especially around comp time. But it is also important that I know, for example, for dinner, I eat 200 grams of steak, and I'll eat, I think it's half a cup of couscous or something. And we know that, my lunches is, about 150 grams of chicken and about the same as sweet potato. And we know that because I've been dropping weight, we need to increase the meals. So it's just a bit of trial and error, but we monitor my weight through that.
Sure. And you're happy that he's giving, or you're at least working together to see, hey, we know you're eating this much, it needs to increase a little bit. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that never felt uncomfortable for you, or when you were first starting out, people saying, when they first bridged that with you, hey, we need to actually eat more, not just for health, but for performance, and the weight on the scale is going to go up with that?
Yeah, I think I've been pretty lucky. The coaches I've had before, all of them have had a decent awareness of eating disorders and how to talk about it with their clients, whether they've had friends and family who have gone through it or partners. I think it's important that coaches know how to have the conversation. I remember my coach, my first one when I was really sick, he couldn't work out, he knew I had an eating disorder, but he couldn't work out why I just couldn't lift this weight that week. And he took me outside and he's like, okay, I want you to write down what you've eaten today. And I'd missed a meal. And he's like, okay, this explains this. You have to be eating before you come to the gym. And it was just sort of otherwise he's like, you're going to have another session tonight and you're not going to like it.
Right.
So it was sort of just helping me realize that I had to eat to be able to perform at the level that I wanted.
Sure.
Honestly, it's originally just having a conversation with someone you trust who might be able to point you in the right direction, whether it's to, go and see a nutritionist, for example, or, okay, you want to start lifting, let's go find a gym, do some trials at a few gyms and see what works for you. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I think that's the biggest thing. Everyone has different coping mechanisms and different mindsets.
Sure. Is there anything that I've missed that you think that we should touch on in regards to eating and training?
I don't think so.
No? That covers a good chunk of what we want to talk about?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, now that we've gotten a bit of the heavier stuff out of the way, let's talk about GPC States. I'm excited to hear about your training coming up. Before you came in, you told me that you actually tweaked your freaking neck Just
Yeah.
last night?
Yeah,
Oh.
last night, spasmed up the side of my right side of my neck while I was benching on my first working set. And luckily I only had 2 working sets, but I was sort of like, oh, okay, this is a bit stiff. And then by the time I was home getting ready for bed and everything, I could barely turn my head. And so I was heat bagged up, like anti-inflammatories. And then I didn't really sleep last night.
No.
Like I just felt like I was lying there with my eyes shut, but every time I needed to roll over, I woke up.
The grimace. I know that feeling
Yeah.
just from old rugby injuries when you're sort of only comfortable in one position when you have to move, which you inevitably do.
Yeah.
It is not a nice feeling.
Yeah, and I think the thing for me that really worried me was like I went to sit up to get out of bed and I couldn't actually bring myself into a sitting position properly.
Right.
And it was just like I couldn't move my head and it was kind of just stuck. I was like, oh, this is going to be great for tomorrow morning.
Oh dear. But you seem to have a bit more movement. Not a huge amount, but you're getting a bit of movement through there.
Yeah, a bit of movement. I've had a heat bag on and off basically.
Yeah.
All morning.
Yeah. Now, being 2 weeks out, were you finishing up your heavy weeks here and taking a 2 week taper off, or do you have a shorter than 2 week taper?
Yeah, so next week will be openers.
Yeah.
So slowly tapering back and then deload the week of.
So yeah, just openers tapering off, and then the full deload leading into the states,
Yeah.
interstates, I should say. That's exciting. Now, which out of the 3 lifts is your favorite? I'm looking at your numbers here, and it's pretty standard. Like usually, people's deadlift stronger than the squat, and then the bench is the lowest. Do you have a favorite? And it all looks actually quite well proportioned too. Some people have like a clear one that's lagging or ahead. So what's your go-to?
Look, in all honesty, my squat has not improved. Like I missed 145 today. I think in all honesty, it wasn't in the right mindset, but I hit 145 last year. If anything, we might get a 5 kilo PB out of it at States. My bench has actually increased. So I hit 75 in the gym this week, which was a PB, and I hit 70 at Capo Nationals last year.
Okay.
Deadlift, I've actually swapped from conventional to sumo as
How
well.
dare you?
How dare you?
Yeah, look, playing to the teacup leverages.
Yeah.
It's just it feels better, but so I pulled a very ugly 165 in the gym. I'm not counting that as a PB because I hitched.
Okay.
So I pulled 160 clean right before it though.
Yeah. And just for people that don't know what hitching is, that's basically when you're letting the bar be supported by your legs, and sometimes you see a little bit of jolting up the thighs with that one. All right, there's a little bit of jolting up the thighs?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a little bit. I've also learned, and I actually have a shocking bruise on my quad.
Yeah.
Because my fingers on my left hand, which is my overhand, have been catching on the skin
Yeah.
as I've been getting to lockout, and I've got like a bruise.
Oh, no.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
decent
okay.
size.
All right. That's really interesting that you switched to sumo, because one of my good friends and clients who I train here, he's just getting into equipped lifting. We've both been getting, and because he wanted to get into it, I'm getting into it too. Got to learn how to coach it. And lucky enough that we know Nathan Baxter, who I'm sure you know as well, who's a wizard in equipped benching and everything like that. But Titan Australia, the only deadlift suit that they had was a sumo stance, and I pulled conventional. I'm like, oh, so I'm going to order a conventional as well from the States. But I picked up that sumo because it was the only one left that was in my size, and I felt so dirty, and I haven't actually used it fully yet. I'm trying to break it in a little bit. It's a bit tight. It's a competition
Yeah.
fit, but I'm trying to teach myself the sumo now as a conventional puller, and I was hoping with every ounce of my body that maybe that my proportions would be good for sumo, and I was like doing the old Google and measuring arm length and torso length. I'm like, damn it, I'm still suited for conventional. But I'm kind of interested to see how the sumo, I'm going to be doing both. I'm going to be pulling a conventionally raw and then sumo in the suit for a little while, and just to see how both of those feel.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Equip's never been something that's interested me at all.
No, it's weird. It's good. But it's really strange, and it's super uncomfortable. You have all these bruises and chafe marks everywhere from this. You come out with blood blisters. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
We've had one of the boys at Rucci's. He's doing equipped for state.
Chaps,
Yeah,
chaps, right?
yeah.
Yeah, we've been following him on
Taylor.
Instagram. Yeah.
So yeah, it's been entertaining watching him try and get into the suit. That's probably the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a learning curve, to say the least. Yeah. But you found that the switch from conventional to sumo's been good for you.
Yeah, because last year before States in March, I actually busted my rib.
Okay.
So I've been wearing a standard 4-inch powerlifting loaded lifting belt, and I've worn it
Lever or prong?
lever.
Yep.
And the issue with that is it sits on my hip bones and then on my rib cage. There's no wiggle room.
Yeah.
And basically I was bracing in conventional, would have been late January, early Feb last year. And I actually separated the cartilage from the rib bone.
Okay.
So
That's called subluxing rib?
I don't know.
Okay.
All I know is that it was, separation.
Painful.
And
Did the same on
painful.
labia. This one sits out about 2 centimeters further than the other one.
Well, it was along the side.
Okay.
So, I struggled basically the whole rest of last year.
Rib injuries are terrible because you just have to wait and they're just really painful. And if it's not a structural thing, it just hurts like heck, but you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and it was just, it was terrible. We made the decision sort of when I was between coaches late last year, early this year. I started learning sumo and it's felt miles better for me.
Oh, great.
And I don't get because the thing with conventional was when I bent over, that was when the risk was of me having the belt slip up and do the rib again.
Yeah.
So now that I'm pulling sumo, I don't have that, but I have
It's
also
just a more vertical position.
Yes. Yeah,
And you've kept that standard belt width?
I've actually just ordered a 3-inch Pioneer.
Okay.
So that should be here in about 6 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Well, I'm interested to see how that goes for you. That's one of the issues that the trainer he was having. He used to always just squat and deadlift with no belt, just raw. And we're actually having a squat challenge on Christmas Day this year. We're going to see. He keeps telling me, because he's a smaller guy, all right, that strength is relative, and I keep telling him strength is absolute. Unless I'm hanging out with Dan Macri, and then I'm the one saying that strength is relative, right?
Yeah.
You know how it is. And then he's like, all right, well, let's do this. We've started our squat program. I'm like, we got to get all the kits. So we got him some knee sleeves, got him a belt. We're going to teach him how to wrap his knees up as we get closer to the date. And he had the same problem. He's got quite a short torso, and it's very uncomfortable for his ribs. And he just couldn't use the lever belt at all. It was too stiff. So he ended up going with the prong belt, which helped a bit because it wasn't quite as tight, and it seemed to have just more flex through it, even though it's the same 10 mil thickness.
Yeah.
So he's gone the prong belt. But maybe, it's something he could look into going into a 3-inch belt as well.
Yeah, Pioneer definitely have probably the best belts for a 3-inch that I've seen. I know there's a couple of other brands that can do them, but Pioneer and just the quality is really good. But I won't go to a prong. I don't have the energy for a prong.
Yeah.
Give me a lever which I can just quickly flick.
I'm all about the lever. Yeah, the lever is the only way in my opinion. But if whatever works for you, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so when you're squatting, did you have the same issues with the rib, or it's just because the deadlift it was such a lower position?
Yeah. So
bent over position.
Yeah. So last year, when I was in prep and we realized I'd done the rib, I couldn't actually do it with my belt myself. That was actually even though it was a lever, I couldn't do the belt up myself because it just hurt so much.
Yeah.
So I would have to brace so that someone could actually do the belt up for me. But this year, the only issue that I have had with the belt is because I've leaned up a lot, I can't tighten the belt because otherwise it's going to be too tight on the ribs and hip. But I'm also not able to brace enough to fully fill out the belt properly.
Sort of in between hole sizes there?
Yeah.
Oh. You're not allowed to wear a jumper under your soft suit, are you?
No.
Fill it out a little bit. Oh, that's a shame. Yeah, well, I guess you said yourself you were planning on eventually moving up a weight class as well. So new weight class brings new belt hole sizes, I guess.
Yeah, look, the goal is the 400 total so I can qualify for Pro Raw. That's been my challenge that I wanted to hit.
Yeah.
So I'll if I get my 400 total and fingers crossed get that Pro Raw invite.
Yeah.
I'll be competing in the 60th class at Pro Raw.
Oh, nice. So is that how the Pro, and you have to excuse me, my knowledge on the Pro Raw is limited. I do like to tune in and see the big dogs in the Pro Raw and the run, see some big lifts, but I don't know the qualifying terms. It's basically they set, here's a total for this weight class. If you can get over that, we'll consider you, and it's by sort of application and...
Yeah, so I'm not too sure. All I've my understanding is you've got to sort of hit, they've got sort of guidelines that they've set. And I know for my class it's 400.
Yeah.
And I know that it's different for the 75s and then the other weight classes that they do at Pro Raw as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's less weight classes altogether,
Yeah.
isn't it? Just so it's 60, 75s and then like a super heavyweight or something for the women?
I think there's another class for women and then supers.
Yeah.
So I think it's 3 or 4 classes, definitely.
Okay. All right. It's the same with the guys. They've narrowed it down to 3 or 4 weight classes as well?
The guys have more. So there's 80s, 95s, 110s, 125s, and then I can't remember if they have 140s and supers or whether it's just 140 plus.
Sure.
And I think with the women, it's actually 75 plus. So I think it is actually just 3 weight classes for the women.
Yeah. Interesting. I'll have to get into Megan's ear about that at some point as well. She's my strong woman competitor. She just competed in her first meet, was novice comp last weekend.
Oh, awesome.
She's also at States in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
So, and then the week after that is the next qualifier for strong woman. So she's just like filled up her schedule with competitions, which programming has been problematic, but we're working through it.
I was going to say, how's her body holding up?
Yeah, it's not ideal to have 3 comps in 4 weeks, but she wants to do 3 comps in 4 weeks. She's going to do 3 comps in 4 weeks. So we'll get her there. But she just hit a 400. But she was weighing high 70s. And her total was 400 at the novice comp, and she's going to be aiming for the 75 class at State. So she's really excited about that.
Yeah.
We've actually got 3 competitors here at State. So we're slowly building a stable of people to compete. Next year, we're hoping for 10 people to jump into comps next year.
Yeah, and the 75 kilo class for States is going to be stacked.
Is it? Well, I was having a look at I know there was, is it Jessica Day who had like a 460 or something total?
Yeah, Jess has got quite a high 400 total.
And then there was one girl from over east, from Melbourne, and I don't know if she's here. Is she here? Because she would have had to have been here quarantining for like months now.
Nah, Jo's not here. She's in Geelong from what I've seen. So,
Okay. Yeah,
she's not coming over.
All right, but she had planned to originally.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the post on the Ruchi's gym site there, so I was like, "Ooh, this is going to be exciting." Yeah. So that's all exciting. Well, I just wanted to say thank you very much for jumping on, because this is a touchy subject with a lot of people, but I think it's important that both people on your side and my side get to hear at least some opinions on it, and they can form their own educated opinions moving forward. So thanks very much for putting that out there. And I'm really excited to see how you go at States. I'll be there handling in the back as well for my athletes. And I'm really excited to see how GPC States go all together this year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really good. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Not a problem at all. And basically, like I said earlier, your YouTube channel talking about powerlifting and mental health is just Sammie Johannes. And I'll put the links in the details of the podcast. So anyone that wants to follow you and your page, they can do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Have a good one, everyone.